Hi, and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. And today I am joined by my good friend, Dr. Philip Chase. Philip!
Hello, AP. It is so great to be here. And this is my favorite thing to do on BookTube is talk with you. So thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome. I am looking forward to this because today we are doing a spoiler talk about Ian C. Esslemont's Return of the Crimson Guard, book 2 of the novels of the Malazan Empire. And as I said, this is a spoiler talk. If you haven't read the book yet, don't want any spoilers, please go to Philip's channel. We have done a non-spoiler talk to talk about general sort of stuff without ruining the book for you. For everyone else, welcome. And Philip, let's get started.
Let's do it. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in here, I would say. A big plot here. Unlike Knight of Knives, book 2 is an epic. It is an epic, for sure. And in that sense, more like perhaps readers who are familiar with the Malazan Book of the Fallen might expect from a Malazan book, I suppose. But yeah, so.
And it's Esslemont. When in professional mode, AP, refer to the author properly.
Yes, even though he's your friend.
Esslemont's novel.
Your friend. Yeah. I'm sure he'll appreciate it.
Esslemont's first novel in the series, Knight of Knives, is almost more of a novella. It's short, it is compact, it is very, very focused, and it is this, I think we described it as sort of a concentrated shot of Malazan straight into your system.
Yeah.
What I think we have with Return of the Crimson Guard is the big, sprawling, epic, you want a big, chunky, big boy fantasy book? Like, here's a big, thick book that you can crush insects with. You can hold open doors with this thing. This, readers of epic fantasy, this is what we love. Big books. I like big books, and I cannot lie. Even better when they're a trilogy.
Oh no! Did you just make that up?
Oh, anyway.
I don't know how I'm going to carry on after that.
We should really actually, pretend to be very, very serious and not that we're just doing this to enjoy ourselves and have fun. Right. So, getting back to Return of the Crimson Guard.
Right.
This is it's unavoidable when talking about the novels of the Malazan Empire and the work of Ian C. Esslemont that comparisons and contrasts are going to be made to the Malazan Book of the Fallen and to Stephen Erikson. I think, and I mentioned this briefly in the video, the non-spoiler video, but I think that people who judge one author against the other are kind of missing the point about these are two different authors.
Right.
They are writing in the same world. They are using some of the same characters. Their stories quite often overlap the same time period in that world. So there will be points of connection, characters of connection, plot threads of connection. And they are very happy with that. That's how they set this up.
Right.
But Esslemont's style is not Erikson's style. Erikson's style is not Esslemont's style.
Right.
Erikson may have published first, but that doesn't mean that these books are a bolt-on or a spin-off. These are their own thing. And taking a perception of this is how Malazan should be and applying it to Esslemont's work, I think is, and I really do hesitate saying this is the wrong thing. I don't like telling people you should read this way or you shouldn't do that. Right. Because, every reader is an individual and you are absolutely free to approach books as you want.
Right.
But bearing in mind that this is a different author who has a different way of expressing and telling the stories that he wants to tell, I do think that has to be borne in mind. They do have slightly different styles. And one of the things that I think Esslemont does very well, and loves to explore is action.
Yeah.
And this book is jam-packed
Yeah.
with action.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely. Yep.
so let's have a little chat about the action stuff then, Philip. Like you,
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about just sort of first, maybe I'll just lay out broadly like we were talking about when the camera wasn't rolling, just the sort of the broad structure of it,
okay.
just so everybody's on the same page, and then we can kind of take it apart a little bit. So what we have here essentially is a massive battle happens in Return of the Crimson Guard, massive, and it happens in 3 acts, if you will. There is the initial conflict between the Italian people, the League or whatever. They're breaking away from the Malazan Empire. Okay, they're rebelling from the empire, and there's a group of conspirators around this alliance, and then there's the imperialists who are loyal to Lassine, essentially. And so you have these two coming together and having their battle. Well, in the midst of this comes, it's called the Return of the Crimson Guard. So they have to show up. The Crimson Guard comes. And because of the external threat, the initial combatants combine together to fight against the Crimson Guard. So you have, that's phase 2, where the imperialists and the Italians come together against the Crimson Guard. But then, literally dropped into this whole massive battle is a third element, which is actually behind the scenes, supported by the crippled god. You have the ship of mages, which literally falls onto the battlefield, and one of the possessed mage, the one who had been using all the other mages' power in order to open the gate, is doing the crippled god's bidding, or it has no mind of his own at this point, or whatever is going on. But then everybody has to come together to fight against this element. So that is phase 3. And in addition to these, you have lots of smaller, very action-packed stories that are woven into all of these as well. So there's a lot of action, like you said.
Yeah, and to put this in perspective, like this is that sequence is basically the last, would you say almost like the last third of the book?
Easily.
Or last quarter. You know, it is a sizable chunk. Yeah. And about the only time I've seen so much battle in a book before was Sanderson's conclusion of The Wheel of Time, where it's an entire book of basically battle. And yeah, you have these moments of respite that are woven in, because you can't just have sword fight after sword fight.
Interesting that you say that, because this feels like it could have almost been the last book in a series because of that. There is an expectation, I think, of, I just read The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne, and the last book ends with a several hundred-page battle. So it has that feel in a way, but this is actually, in a way, the first book of a series, and so that's interesting.
And a weird point of comparison then, if you think of Gardens of the Moon, chapter 2 of Gardens of the Moon.
Yeah,
that unexpected level of engagement that we have there. But what I'll say about this is, in order to get to that point, all of those different factions, all have point of view characters who we have been following the entire novel. And some of the point of view characters don't really have a lot to do in that battle, but you still have followed them all the way to this point. So there are a lot of point of view characters. It is juggling a lot of different characters. And when you have the Crimson Guardsmen, who are soldiers with soldier names, and you have the Harbor Guards, and you have the Malazan Guards, and you have, we get a lot of these different groups. And a lot of the similar, they're not similar sounding names, but a lot of similar naming conventions and in these little groups. Now, I will say, every group is distinct. Every character is distinct. You don't sort of go, that character reminds me of that one. Like they feel very different. And it's incredible with this number of points of view and the number of characters involved that Esslemont is able to make these characters distinctive enough that what anyone else would have done would have been, basically generic soldier number one. It's like there aren't any generic soldier number ones. They all have little quirks, little personality traits. They feel real.
Agreed.
But when we get to that section, when we have this initial battle taking place between the loyalists versus the separatists,
right?
The chaos of the battlefield is reflected in the chaos of the structure. And I will admit, I lost my place of who was who and who was on whose side during that sequence.
Right.
And personally, I think that Esslemont intended that structure to do that, to show us, to give us that experience of the confusion of the battlefield, and also to show us the fluidity of the fact that the different sides aren't really that different. But at the same time, I did lose my place. I had to stop and go, hang on, which set of characters is this? Which side are they on? Who am I following? So some people will see that as a detriment. And if you're reading solely for the pleasure of, oh yes, I'm in this battle and this battle's going to be glorious and I know where everyone is, this might be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get past that bit and it becomes simplified in that all of the sort of the separatists who are left over and the imperialists who are left over after their battle and it's been resolved are now facing off against the Crimson Guard, it is suddenly very, very simple. You have two sides and all of the Malazan various characters are all on one side and the Crimson Guard are on the other. It's suddenly much simpler and much closer to what we come to expect in epic fantasy. Clearly delineated sides.
Yep. It's interesting. I came to this, I think, with a little advantage in a way. My first time reading this was after I read Path to Ascendancy. So I actually knew some of these characters already. And that's, I guess we can't spoil Path to Ascendancy for anyone who hasn't read that yet. But I don't know, maybe that's even an easier thing to do, is read Path to Ascendancy first and then try to tackle. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it, but if you don't mind being confused, because I did have a couple moments myself when I had to remind myself, okay, wait, she's with that group. Oh yeah, okay, I'm good. And I knew a lot of these characters coming into it. So I do know where you're coming from when you say it got chaotic, which is, as you say, I think it's a legitimate observation. That's how battles should feel, right?
It's an odd thing because I know if you think back to some of the early fight sequences, like one of the scenes is Traveler fighting on the beach against the Eater, right?
Yeah,
like I've remembered that correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Traveler and the Eater. Yes.
Yeah. And so Traveler has this whole fight sequence that is basically off page, and you go, oh, how can we have this fight sequence that's off page? And then when you look at all of the other fight sequences, you go, we have fight sequences that are on page. We have sword duels. We have big battles. We have mage battles. We have squad battles. We have Moranth munitions. We have soldiers fighting against Relandris, the soul-taken divers.
Right.
It just
and in that particular battle or fight that you mentioned with Traveler, that is coming from Eriko's perspective at that moment. Is that how you say that? Eriko, the gentle giant, the Thelakai. I love that character, by the way, a beautiful character. But so we're from his perspective, and he doesn't want to look. He doesn't want to see that battle because he knows it's going to be gruesome and bloody, and he's a gentle person. So he looks away, and yes, you're absolutely right. We don't get all the action. We just see the aftermath, and it is definitely the Edur who are.
But then compare that scene where Eriko looks away, and we don't see it. You go, oh, that was just a cop out because Esslemont didn't want to write it. Compare that to the Segala duel,
Oh my. Yeah.
Where it is clear Esslemont knows how to write a badass
Oh yeah.
fight.
You're talking about Rel now, right?
No, 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 no.
Oh, okay.
Iron
On
bars.
the ship. On the ship. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Iron bars
Iron
versus a
bar.
Segala.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. Absolutely agreed. Yeah.
And that is a brutal,
Yeah.
short, frenetic, action-packed fight sequence.
Yes.
And then when we have Rel, a banished Segala, fighting, holding the door, holding the bridge, fighting Relandris, you know, those descriptions, you go like, Esslemont knows how to deliver fantasy action incredibly well.
Oh yeah, in so many different ways too. I mean, you get the common soldier's perspective in there with like Nate, for example, who was a character I initially didn't like. This guy, I thought he was kind of a jerk. And then it's funny, we talked about the naming conventions earlier. He gets named Sergeant Jumpy.
But what I really wish I had taken a copy of that quotation about what happens in that, because Braventooth just looks at him and goes, yeah, sorry, yeah, Jumpy. And he's like, yeah, that's not going to catch on. And someone else just yells up the line, shut it, Jumpy. You know, that's it. He is now forever Jumpy. And the narrative changes. Yeah. He now becomes Jumpy in the actual text, not his name. His name changes. And you just go, that is so well done.
It's beautifully done. It is hysterical. It's absolutely funny. And at the end, I love how Esslemont has him embrace the name, which I thought was really nice. You know, and so he had gone from, no, that's not going to stick. Nobody's going to call me that. And then someone calls it, move it, Jumpy, you know. So that was really, I mean, we talked about the names before, and just this is a great example of how well and how I think interwoven they can be with the humor as well. So I like that a lot.
But it's even like when you hear of the Crimson Guard Shimmer, and you go, so this female, quite noble, like she is a mercenary, she is tough, she is the commander of her unit. Right. But like she's really cool. And then you hear about her old commander, Skinner, and you go, right, I know in The Simpsons there was Principal Skinner, and that was just his surname. I get a funny feeling that that's not how this guy got his name. Yeah. And he is scary and ominous on the page.
Yep. Absolutely.
And like, but you were talking about Eriko there. His death.
Oh, yeah.
Like we have this beautiful moment, and again, like, Kyle is witness to this, and he's bonded with Eriko.
Yes. And
they're with Traveler, and Eriko has made Traveler promise, not to interfere. And Kalor appears and kills Eriko, the last of his kind.
It's like cutting down a redwood tree or something. It's sacrilegious. Yeah.
And Kyle is going nuts because he knows Traveler could have done something. And Traveler's like, no, I am bound by my oath. But then Kalor can't let it go.
He's going to cut his head off.
Yeah. And so Traveler gets to step in, and that is a brilliant sequence. And when he says that this is for an old friend.
Yep.
Now
we know who that is.
No, and even though this is spoiler talk, this relates to something that happens in a different series. So we are not talking about that name. But this,
it's so hard. Yeah.
This is one of those moments when you have read that other book, that when you read this, you're like, yes.
Yes. And it's a beautiful illustration of how interwoven, as you said earlier, it's a paradox, actually, how both of these authors have their own style, they have their own series, which are separate, but they complement each other at the same time. And this is a wonderful example of where they really interweave and they enrich each other, I would say. So if you've come reading Return of the Crimson Guard, having read that other book, that other series, you'll know who that person, that traveler is referencing is. And this will be a kind of like, as you said, this is yeah, okay. But I thought you liked Calor.
I'm mercurial.
Okay.
It depends on the book. I didn't like him here. He was an asshole.
Okay. Wait, I have to ask on the subject of characters you don't like. Taishren. I mean, the guy, he stays neutral through this in his sort of his little cloud of wisdom or whatever, wherever he is now. He's basically, I don't know, he hasn't ascended yet, but it's the next thing to it, perhaps. But he comes in to save the day at the end, right? A bit of a, well, it gets foiled because of the.
Does it get foiled?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we'll see. But Taishren plays a, would you say, positive role in this story?
You're gonna make me say that I like Taishren, aren't you?
I'm trying.
Okay. I will go as far as to admit,
yes,
I dislike him less. But here's the thing, obviously, it's like in Night of Knives,
yes,
Taishren was like a really interesting character that Kiska meets. And of course,
yes,
here we see Kiska again, except, she's just being referred to as Taishren's bodyguard. And,
right,
we know her from Night of Knives.
Yes.
And you suddenly go, a lot has happened since Night of Knives.
Oh, yeah.
She is now much more impressive.
Right.
And
bonded to Taishren too, because her reaction when he dies, goes in the rent, along with the Seven Cities mage, whose name is slipping me right now, but do you recall it? Anyway, we can look it up. But Kiska is absolutely just broken up. I mean, it's obviously there is a closeness there. And if a character that we like Kiska can be close to Taishren, there must be something there, right? There must be something likable about him.
And what is fascinating about Taishren, which is not something that I think ever comes across in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Uh-huh.
Taishren's power is made apparent in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Yeah.
But Taishren, as having achieved a level of, I suppose we could almost call it enlightenment.
Uh-huh.
It seems much more Eastern in its philosophy, because he's sitting there, he is seeing this very this mundane conflict between the Empire, the separatists, this rebellion, the threat of the Crimson Guard, and he's looking at it going, no, it doesn't matter. This is just how kingdoms function. It's going to go on. If I step in, my level of power will cause things to escalate. And when they escalate, that's going to be a worse situation for everyone. So actually, the wisest thing to do is not fight at all. And we get a sense that he's looking at all of these futures. He's working out these futures. I think, a very glib way it's been shown was Doctor Strange in one of the Avengers movies, where he twitches and he sees all these different futures and goes, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
Taishren here, over a decade before Doctor Strange did it, I think has done much the same thing of looking at this and saying, no, me intervening is going to be bad because of the power escalation, this concept of convergence and the drawing of fell magical powers to this area.
Yes. And
that is a level of wisdom that I think was hard learned after the events at the Siege of Peel.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair.
And it's nice seeing something that happened in one book in one series leads to a character evolution
Yeah.
off page between series where
Yeah.
we get almost this different character, because when we make that connection, we see, yes, he's learned from his mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool. But speaking of characters we see in a different light, I'm skipping around all over the place, but I can't help it. There's so much to talk about. Lysine, obviously, this is a big thing at the end, but we can talk about it anytime, I suppose. It's interesting how when somebody with such a stature passes away, it's how she is seen in the aftermath. Someone who is resented, somebody who is hated, despised, who is seen as a mystery, and maybe some of that, the fact that she's so despised. And this is, I think, this was alluded to in one of the little at the beginning of the chapter, one of the little excerpts that both of the authors put in there, how Lysine was a mysterious figure, and probably a lot of the resentment was because of that, because people didn't understand her. We don't like that, and that annoys us. But we go from seeing her as an oppressive dictator of a sort to, there's a great deal of sympathy. All the common soldiers get in formation behind the cart where her body is lying, after she's been, even the assassin, the head of the claw possum, who didn't seem all that loyal to her. His reaction to it is also, it's interesting how people see her in the after her death. It's very different from what people thought of her before. It's a very powerful thing in here. I think this is one of the biggest moments in the entire series. This is a character whom, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've never seen from her perspective. But she has been so central to so many things, even when she's not present, even when she's not on the page. She has been so central to so many things that she is just exerts this outsized influence. And interesting because she's such a small woman too. And she appears throughout here mysteriously in the midst of the battle, getting rid of, certain adversaries and that sort of thing. So we know her prowess and all that, but it's interesting how people were attached to her without realizing they were attached to her. She's an institution almost.
And yet I think this is absolutely fascinating. And it's this sort of, we have an external view of a person.
Yeah.
And we have been judging them on what has happened to the empire.
Right.
And yet when we get a look inside the inner workings of the empire, you start thinking, well, what other decisions could she have made? And it's right. Her sense of betrayal when she finds out about Tok, the elder, being on the other side, or some of the old guard. And these, we remember, these were the family. This was Kellenved and Dancer's old gang, who were a family. They ran a crime syndicate out of a bar. And from that humble beginning, forged an empire.
Yep.
And we get a sense that every time Kellenved and Dancer went off on some expedition, on some crazy quest to go and find some weird mystical thing, she had always been left behind to keep things ticking over, to keep the empire running, to tidy up their messes. They would go and start a war, and she'd go, right, well, I'll just organize all the logistics of finding you an army then. And she is then, gets to the stage in Night of Knives, obviously. Enough is enough. Kellenved and Dancer have to go. That's what we see in Night of Knives. And here, everything has started to unravel. And it's not necessarily that she is a bad empress, that she is a bad leader. It's she is stretched too thin. The nobles are corrupt and have been encroaching onto all of these different positions. We see that Malak Rel has been doing the same thing and worming his way in. We see that people who were afraid that she was going to kill them to consolidate her power have gone into hiding, so she can't rely on them anymore and has had to elevate people. And we get to understand it's not necessarily that she was going to have the old guard killed to stop them taking over.
Right.
She was trying to permanently get rid of them so that it would be clear there is one leader.
Yeah.
And she is pragmatic. She is cold. She is callous. She is calculating. Like, I'm not saying this was a nice plan. But we get a sense of understanding of who she is.
Yes.
And we see how alone she is.
True.
And when we see that she doesn't have friends and confidants and people to share the burden with,
right,
we cannot help but feel a little sorry for her.
Right. Yep.
And then when we see that, oh, why does everyone fear her? And she goes out and is taking out the Avowed, the Crimson Guard Avowed.
With her bare hands.
With her bare hands and feet. They're armed, armored, big weapons, skillful, really powerful warriors with these magical abilities.
Yeah.
And she just kicks their ass.
Yeah. Very cool. It's interesting too when you see her interacting with one of those old guard, like Urko Crust, for example. You know, it's almost impossible to put into words. And Esslemont has done such a wonderful job in here of putting these two together at the end of all this. And there's so much unspoken between them. There is fear between them, but there's also an affection there. There is their memories that they share that are just so powerful. And there's just sense of just so many layers, and it's a complex thing going on here when they see each other at the end of things.
But do you remember that moment when Lysine is talking to the captured old guard? Because Rolandris is running around outside and they're going like, at least, you know, give my soldiers weapons. Yes. And like she's standing there and she exacts a promise from them. Serve me loyalty, give me your oath.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, fine. And she'd already arranged for all of the weapons. So you knew that she was going to do it.
Yeah. But
she was cold and practical about it to go, this is the only way I can get you to give me your oath.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's just an oath. It's not a magical oath. It's not, something that's sworn and magically enforced. It's still just words, but she trusts them enough that if they say they'll do it, she'll believe them.
Yep.
And that's that depth of relationship that I think, you were just talking about. I love those moments where this implied depth of their friendship and history is suddenly laid bare.
Yeah, it's really well done in here, and it's just one of the facets of this book that I really enjoyed. That and of course these two guys, Erikson and Esslemont, have created this rich history, gaming this whole thing and over years and years and years, and it really shows in those moments, those beautiful moments. So many others in here too. We're not allowed to say, okay, so there's Traveler, right?
We know who Traveler is.
Do we in here? I'm not. Oh, yes. Okay, we do. We absolutely do because of the sword.
I know, but hang on a sec. But who is standing with Traveler in the battle against Rolandris?
Right.
Temper?
Yeah. Temper and Ferrule. Right.
Who now has a different name, Sweetgrass.
Sweetgrass. But he was the bear. They were trying out different names there, and he was trying to give Temper some names, and Temper's like, no.
But you love that because we saw how Jumpy got his name.
Yeah.
And then, we have these two veterans going, well, I'm going to maybe try a new name. What we do? And they're trying these different things out. And you just see that, no. And he goes, well, my name was originally Sweetgrass. And then you almost feel that moment where he goes, why did I tell you guys that?
Yeah.
Because that's it done. But we know it's Dassam because Dassam and the sword are together again.
Okay. I'm so glad we can say that because there have been previous discussions where I've been bursting to say it. So Yeah, absolutely. So Dassam, his thread in this book is absolutely fascinating, and he is on a quest of vengeance, which is, you know, it's interesting because we see the damage that this quest inflicts, and yet we're sympathetic toward him at the same time. And he's been hurt very badly by someone. Is it revealed in here? It isn't exactly overtly revealed.
It's not spelled out in this book. I honestly believe there is enough in this book that people will know.
Right.
But this is where we get into a weird thing, even with spoilers.
Right.
That people go, but that isn't actually confirmed until later. And I don't like ruining things. But what I will say is, in this is not Dassam. We see that Dassam is changing.
Right.
And he has moments where he comes back to his humanity, but he is clearly ascending or in that process that we have seen explored, because he is becoming another person. And,
he doesn't die. Yeah.
And it's really quite interesting. We also see that magic in, we can go back to Dassam in a second, but it was the point that a lot of people talk about the magic of the Malazan world, and it's, oh yeah, we now know about warrants. You don't understand the magic of the Malazan world until you have read Esslemont, because let's face it, if one of the two authors knows and understands the background mechanics of how all of the magic worked, it's Esslemont, and he explores some incredibly clever things.
Yes.
So Ho is the character.
Yes.
And we know that he's a Divers human.
Interesting. Yeah.
Relandris is a soul-taken Divers. He's both.
Right.
This is stuff that is just wild and wacky and crazy when we see all of these sorts of the mages that they meet just before Eriko dies.
Yes. Yeah, no, I was just going to say too, the Crimson Guard, the Avowed, their vow reminds me deeply in some ways of the Talanimas. They have vowed to destroy the Malazan Empire, correct?
Yeah.
So that is a vow. It's similar to the Talanimas, where they have vowed to destroy the Jagat. And this vow, there's something sacred about it, something mystical, magical about it, which gives them, until they are tied to this purpose. And so they are essentially immortal. Although you can kill them, they can become the brethren, right?
Yeah, and that's a number of them die and become the brethren. But the brethren are these spirits that then are still bound to this vow. And they still serve the guard. They act as messengers. But we can see that the brethren can be suborned. They're not omniscient spirits, because Skinner fools them.
Right.
The scene with Skinner's lieutenant, the mage assassin.
Cal. Yeah.
Now, you know him from another book.
Oh, yes. I've encountered him before. Yeah.
But Kyle and Topper's fight here.
Yeah.
And I loved how Topper is introduced in this book, that Tatterdemalion, this jester, this raggedy man who's haunting the Imperial Warren, basically just killing all of the claw that he used to be the master of.
Yeah.
You know, because he's pissed off. There is a reason for it, but it's in another series. But he's there doing this, and then during the battle with the Crimson Guard, where Carl is trying to take out Lysine, and he just appears and he's like, right, you. And suddenly they have a mage assassin real world Warren fight.
Yeah.
Where they are popping in and out and chasing each other and trying to kill each other, that these two are so closely matched.
Yeah.
And of course, Kyle is going, the only person who could ever face me is Dancer. You know, he's the only one. And Topper's going, we'll see about that. But how does he die?
The Deadhouse. Or
willingly he
Yeah.
willingly surrenders himself to the Deadhouse
Right.
rather than be defeated.
Yep.
The hubris of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Topper is, and he's trying to get Topper to come in. Come on and fight me in here. Come on. And Topper's like, yeah, no, thanks. Good luck. So I thought that was just a really fun element that Esslemont put in here, and the fact that he wove it into the end after. At the moment just before, obviously, it was a distraction that allowed. What's her name? The assassin who actually did kill Lysine. What's her name?
Vorkin's daughter.
Yes. It begins with a T, I think. But anyway, she's working for Malik Rel, or working with Malik Rel. The relationship there is a little who's got power over who is not exactly clear there. I think.
Well, Malik Rel, the merciful, obviously.
Yeah. Well, he's the manipulator here. He's definitely using her, although I'm not sure how aware she is of that. But nevertheless, she does his bidding. She does the dirty job and gets rid of Lysine. Malik Rel. I mean, we've come a long way from Deadhouse Gates, haven't we?
And what's interesting here, so Malik Rel, the Gestal.
Yeah. Oh, yes. As Ian Esslemont pointed out when you were talking, the Gestal. Yeah.
But we have that scene where obviously he had power over Miel. He had this power, the Gestal power.
Yes.
And Miel is no longer under his power anymore.
Yeah.
And you can see that Malik Rel is a bit, that's a touch inconvenient.
Yeah.
Happened to a nicer guy.
Yeah. But is he fit? Is he fit for the role that he is usurping? Because he has proven himself a master manipulator. He has proven himself a schemer, one who knows his own faults as well. He admits to himself, I've been impatient in the past. This is pointed out to him by his servant / mage friend, whatever. And he seems to be, as much as I can't stand him, you have to, as you say, these are characters who are so well realized, so interesting, with such so vivid. You can't help but admire what he's done here. And okay, he's set to become the emperor, right?
And we also know when it comes to running an empire,
right,
he'll be really good at it.
Exactly.
It'll be an evil empire, but it'll be a really well-run evil empire.
Yeah.
It's he's thinking 10 or 12 moves ahead of everyone else.
Right.
He is putting pieces in place for contingencies based on other contingencies, just in case.
And that's what made Lysine good. That's why she was good at what he's even a few steps ahead of her, it seems.
And I think it's because once you get into power, there is less room for you to be doing things behind the scenes. There's less room for you to manipulate people because you're now out in front. If you're standing in the shadows, there's a lot you can do without people knowing so that you can manipulate them. But once you're out in front of all that, your hands become tied in a number of ways that they weren't before. So he is very intelligent, ruthless, efficient. He is all of these things that would make him a brilliant emperor. I just loathe him.
Yeah, same here. But isn't this true of history? I mean, think about all of human history. Who comes out on top? People who are aggressive, people who are manipulative, people who want power and go for it tend to be the ones who get it. And it's not, we don't talk so much about Emperor so-and-so the nice, unless it's, you know what I mean? To get to that degree of power, you have to be kind of vicious, don't you?
And certainly when you think like Julius Caesar was a great general backed up by a great general, because Mark Antony was a fairly good general as well.
Yep.
He was well connected. He had all this money. He had his legions. And because he rewarded the legions well, they loved him. They were loyal to him.
Sure.
And, he set up that, he was part of that triumvirate ruling Rome, and then became emperor. But then you think of Augustus, and Augustus wasn't a great general.
No. Okay.
But Augustus was incredibly smart, and he knew how to manipulate people. He knew how to play people off each other. He knew, you back me up on that thing, I'll undercut him over here, cut that guy out here, do this. He was ruthless in some of the things that he did. And that's what, Augustus made the Roman Empire. And Roman historians, please correct me if I'm wrong. I am not an expert on this, but I always got the impression Caesar might have been good. Augustus was a great emperor and consolidated everything. And he wasn't a great warrior. He wasn't a great general. But what he was calculating, methodical, and brilliant. The sort of
damn good at marketing too. He would have been a good marketer, right?
So let's talk a little bit about some of the humorous incidents that occurred in this novel, because I know you laughed out loud at least a couple of times.
Oh my goodness, I was laughing. I'm laughing at myself laughing right now. So yeah, I had a good time with this.
Because one of the moments, and this is not one of the crazy laugh out loud moments, but one of the moments that really tickled me was when Silk goes, "Oh, I know a secret way into the palace," and they go down there, and they have to trudge through the sewers. And they'd been joking, going, "Hope it's not the sewers," or "Hope it's not a shitty idea or something," and it literally is. And I had to laugh. And then he gets to the statue, and he whispers whatever magical incantation, and it opens this portal, and they walk through, and you get this real D&D magical quest thing. Beautifully done. And then later on, they go, "Right, we need to go somewhere else." And he goes, "Follow me." And they go down, and they end up in the same room. And he says a different thing, and it opens to a different place. And you go, "Oh, come on."
Yeah, exactly. That's good stuff. Yeah.
But the stuff with the munitions and the new sappers being trained.
Yes, the kids, right? Yeah.
Which you have that moment of, meeting the kids and going, "Oh, this is great." And then we find out that a couple of them died. And we knew them for like a half paragraph.
It hits you. Yeah.
And then you go, "Oh, I thought they were going to live and they were going to be our new scrappy little squad."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The way that Esslemont moves us from laughing to crying. Well, laughing to crying, from that joy and hilarity to sadness and the pathos of it, mixing in these big battle sequences where you go, "This is absolutely awesome." Like Rel fighting Rolandris with Temper and Ferrell, and this amazing battle. Right. And you go, "Oh," and they back him up into the portal that the shadow dance, or no, was it a shadow dance? Yeah, it was a shadow dance. Opens up the portal.
Yes.
He falls into it and you go,
Liz that's Liz who does the dance. Yeah.
And Rolandris goes into the portal and you're like, "Yes." And then Rel's dead.
Yeah.
And you go, "You can't kill him. I liked him. He just did this amazing thing. You can't kill him now."
Yeah.
And for all of these characters, like I said, there are a lot of characters, there are a lot of point of view characters.
Yeah.
And you go, the fact that with character deaths, I was upset, I was annoyed, I was hurt.
Right.
That Esslemont had killed these characters.
Yeah.
You may not realize it, but the only way to get a person to feel that is making you care about the characters. It's creating a character you care about. It is an element of characterization.
Yes.
And the fact that Esslemont can do that with so many of them.
Yeah.
You go, that's a pretty impressive talent.
It's a great feat. And another thing he does really well in that regard is when Rel dies, we are with Hurl. I am Hurl at that moment. And that's one reason why it hits me so hard, because there's these little details, like the fact that she went to his body last. Why? Because she knew the way he had fallen. She knew he was gone, and she didn't want to face it. And I didn't want to face it because I was Hurl in that moment. The same thing when one of the kids died. I forget, they have such funny names. I love those kids. And I'm with Nate, and Nate was such a jerk. Nate is such a crusty fellow who I did not like at all at first. But when one of those kids dies, you can see how it hits Nate, and he's feeling this wasn't supposed to happen. These kids weren't supposed to be hurt. And because Nate, who is a jerk, is experiencing this sorrow, I am experiencing it as well. And you can see even the crustiest person has emotions and has these feelings, and really well done.
But to go back to then bouncing off that sadness to the humor with Jumpy, Nate.
Yeah.
When they ask him, why were you out there trying to kill Rolandris? And then the other sappers are going, you were out there trying to get more munitions, weren't you? And he was like, no. Honestly, because he's been told he's not allowed to tell anyone why he was there, and he was forced into it. He didn't want to go. But we see this is how a legend gets built.
Yeah.
This is how a reputation gets built. And then we find out that they did steal a whole bunch of munitions from the Imperial tent.
Yeah.
Where did you get those? I stole them from the tent. Well, give them back. We'll give half back.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Yeah, here Nate, or Sergeant Jumpy, reminds me a little bit of the character Korab in, you know what I'm talking about, who's should have been killed numerous times, but somehow isn't, and just we're with him. We're crawling along in the middle of this battle with this poor guy, hoping against hope that he's going to somehow make it through. Maybe that's why I started empathizing with him more and more, even though he was kind of a jerk. It was because I wanted him to live. And that's really well done. And
that's Esslemont makes us care about characters we don't want to care about. He makes us like characters like Teshrin, who I don't want to like.
But you hate a little less now.
Yeah, and I'm always when an author can change my mind about a character, I'm always impressed by that. And I know not everyone is, and everyone, but when I have it fixed in my mind, I don't like this character. If an author can change my mind, there must be a power to that writing, how that character is expressed, how I have encountered them and experienced them on the page.
Yep.
There must be a power to that to change my mind. And so often we fixate on what we perceive as weaknesses or flaws, and we go, oh, but I didn't like this and I didn't like that. And we forget to look at the things that we go, hang on a sec, this was done incredibly well. And I really liked this thing. I mean, one of the strengths of Esslemont's sort of exploration, say, of the magic, in all of these, I have seen a number of different videos now on YouTube of people explaining the magic system, the warrens and the holes and all this stuff.
Right.
And they keep saying that humans can't access Elder Warrens.
Oh.
And you go, well, with the exception of, in this book, one of the squad mages.
How's he do that?
And we also have Silk accesses an Elder Warren.
Leosan, yeah.
And you go, right, so all of these experts on the Malazan systems, I go, okay. Now, in their defense, and I will defend them on this, in general, there are very few human characters who can access Elder Warrens.
Yeah.
We meet very few characters who can do it.
So the mages are blown away. The mages, when on the battlefield, when however you say his name, Heuk, Hoik or Huk or whatever.
Hoik.
He accesses the Teist Andi Warren, Curled Galain, Is that the right one? Yeah.
Um,
Is that the
yeah.
right one? Yeah, I think so. The
Yeah.
Darkness, the Warren of Darkness, the Elder Warren.
They're all the same.
Yeah, right. What are these guys doing with all these names? Anyway, he accesses it. The other mages are like, wait, there has to be a Teist Andy there or something, right? And we actually do meet a Teist Andy when Sergeant Jumpany has gone to try to find his buddy Hoik, who's been this hidden gem, apparently. He thought he was just a drunk, but drinking horse blood and all that. Ugh. But anyway, he goes to find him. He sees a Teist Andy inside the darkness, doesn't he? I mean, so I don't know what's going on exactly there, but somehow, yeah.
I am sure. I mean, I don't know if it's ever explained. I would have to actually look into this, but I get the impression that that is either a reference to Anomander Rick or a reference to Draconis, and I would guess that it's actually Draconis.
Okay, I would agree with that guess. Yeah, interesting.
And the thing is, if we think of it's again, we'd be getting into spoilers about another series, and I don't want to do that. But I think it's Draconis, but I don't think it is Draconis in his full form.
Physically, yeah.
I think this was a priest of night. Yeah. And this is an aspect, a shadow, an echo of Draconis that we are actually seeing. Because remember, Draconis is an elder god.
Right.
And we sometimes forget that elder gods are not flesh and blood people. That gods are gods. They may manifest a physical body, but they are elemental in some respect. They might like walking around in a flesh suit, but they're not necessarily made of a flesh suit.
Right.
So I think that there's a complexity to divinity within the Malazan universe that we don't get a huge metaphysical explanation for, and that's absolutely fine. It's magic. I like it being a bit mysterious.
And sometimes a god can be a sword, as Kyle finds out.
And at least it's a spin on the whole talking sword thing.
Yeah.
It's yes, my sword was actually a god. Right. Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean he's I like his journey, Kyle. If he's kind of the naive parochial, tribal person who is getting introduced to all kinds of bigger mysteries along the way, and of course is wrapped up into this conflict within the Crimson Guard between those who would have been loyal to Kaz and those who are following the mean guy. Yeah, Skinner, thank you. So he gets wrapped up into all of this, and he travels along with the other guys, his buddies, Stalker and
Badlands
and Coots, I think.
Coots.
Yeah. Great stuff. I mean,
but if we think about it structurally, Kyle for us is very much a point of view character who is our window into the world. So if we think of how that is traditionally used, here is your callow youth from your farm who's gone off on a quest.
Right.
We get that narrative help from Esslemont to navigate this world.
Right.
But instead of it being a by your numbers quest fantasy, Esslemont goes, no, that's really boring. Yes, it's going to happen, but it's going to happen in the Malazan world, and there's going to be complications. So moving on. And, that is one of the reasons why I love these books. I love reading all sorts of fantasy. Don't get me wrong. I like quest fantasy that is straightforward, chronological, follows a small group as much as the next person. I like those. They are entertaining stories.
Yeah.
But what I get from Esslemont's work, what I get from Erikson's work, is I get a novel that does that and more.
Yeah.
I get a mental workout. I get to flex and exercise literary analytical muscles that I don't generally get to do in fantasy literature.
True.
And that for me is so incredibly rewarding.
Yep. And it's true of both authors. It absolutely is. So have we missed anybody in our spoiler talk? I feel like we've done pretty well here, but I'm sure we've missed somebody in all this. We did mention the Crimson Guard here and there, and they do have this conflict now, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm assuming because I haven't read the rest of the novels of the Malazan Empire yet. I'm assuming they're going to come up again, but and now that Kaz is back, and it's revealed that he had been betrayed by Skinner and Cowell, and so I'm assuming these characters are going to be coming back now that we know for sure from this book that Skinner's actually serving the crippled god. I had a question about him wanting to be the king. Isn't Calor already the king? Isn't that there? Is he asking for somebody's job here?
There's only one king, and that's Elvis. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Oh dear.
Uh-huh.
He is the king, yes.
But Skinner is nothing if not ambitious. What was his plan? Well, if we get rid of Lucene, then we can take over the Malazan Empire. I'll become emperor. We can then dissolve the Malazan Empire or rule it as an immortal.
Yeah, he's kind of a jerk, isn't he?
At least he has ambition.
Yes,
the man has ambition.
He does indeed.
And he is very similar to Calor.
Yeah.
Someone who sees the goal, is pragmatic and is going to stop at nothing to get it and doesn't care who he hurts. Right. There are similarities between them, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't think the crippled god really cares who's in what position. He's all about getting the most powerful people. And if they want to fight it out, they want to fight it out. And whoever's the strongest is going to be left.
Yeah.
That it's the crippled god has shown that he's a bastard. So it wouldn't be above him to go, yes, there's one position, fight it out.
Yeah, he's a tortured bastard, that's for sure.
And
what we get there at the end, of course, is him lashing out, trying to just wreak havoc, essentially, and part of his broader quest. The Warrens have become very dangerous places, so he's messing around with the magic, everything else, and just chaos, literally chaos, right? Is what he's trying to introduce.
And this was one of the this is what I had meant to mention about the whole thing with Topper.
Yeah.
In that, while it was very, very cool that he was hanging out in the Imperial War and killing people,
right?
The fact that he was there imposed a narrative constraint. And it was this wonderful way to stop that whole issue of, well, why don't they just use the Imperial Warren to do X? And Esslemont had thought of that and had Topper sitting there killing everyone.
Had a psycho hanging out there. Yeah. Interesting.
It's one of those clever techniques that, yeah, there's a reason why they're not using it. There's a reason why they're having to do things this way. In
a similar way, you have Edgewalker kicking everybody out of the realm of shadow. He doesn't want people get out, you know. So right? I mean,
and the thing was, that became such a wonderful running joke.
Yeah.
You could just, because it got to the stage where I was imagining Edgewalker was sitting there and he was like, "Get off my lawn."
Yeah, he's this emaciated corpse-like, entity in there. Yeah.
"Get off my lawn, you kids! Get out of here! I don't want you. What are you doing? Go away!" And the scene that we had with Shadow Throne.
Yes. Yeah. Good stuff. And Cotillion too.
And they appeared like Cotillion was genuinely menacing.
Oh yeah.
In that scene.
Yeah.
And for those who have read the Malazan Book of the Fallen, we have a very particular view of Dancer, of the rope of Cotillion, and seeing Esslemont's version of him.
Yeah.
And this is something that both Erikson and Esslemont have talked about, that when one of them created a character and it was their player character, the other person saw it. And so when that character shows up in either series,
right,
it's either a character they know from the inside or a character they know from the outside. And it is fascinating, those little differences between them, that here Cotillion is really menacing.
Yeah.
And he never seemed quite that scary when Erikson wrote him.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, he has that side to him for sure. and he is a bit of a legend. I also like the what was his name? The monkey messenger guy who kept changing from a person to a monkey and shrinking and getting bigger. Herb? What was his name? I forget.
But it's when he's trying to sweep up the mud.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's moving along with the mop, and who's standing there unveiled in all his glory? We have Father Light Ozark standing there.
Yeah.
And this little
putting the mop on it.
Plop, plop, plop. And eventually he does that. Esslemont describes it so well because he's standing there staring at Shadow Throne going like, you young upstart, and there's this banging at his foot. And eventually he just does the
and there's this
and then moves his leg to let him pass. And you go, way to undermine that whole pompous standing there and all your grandeur. And then that's when you realize that's how clever Shadow Throne is. That here was this uber powerful elder, the Elder of Light, standing here doing all of this, and he sends this little guy in to do this. And
that's how you defuse a very tense situation with some comedy.
And even like when they're walking through Shadow and they're like, how long is this going to be? And then it's like, oh, okay, we're here. Because he was just messing with them. He wanted to see how long he could keep it going. Like, all of those sorts of tricks that get played. And that is another type of humor that's worked in, apart from the squad humor and the physical comedy. That there are these just wonderful little moments where you go, that's actually quite funny.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Great stuff. Anything else, AP? Were we missing?
I think I've talked about, well, I've obviously again talked far too much. I apologize, Philip.
No, you don't have to apologize. Everybody loves it. I love it. Everyone loves it. Don't worry about it.
But I think I've covered like a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. Again, like there's shipboard stuff in here. There's there's beach stuff, jungle stuff. There's stuff on the plains. Like all these different landscapes are evoked. There's a lot of different settings that we get to see. We get to see urban combat. We get to see different types of combat. The variety of storytelling, where we see a squad story, a Kyle's story evolving, dipping in and out of the squad and the army and those different aspects. We have the political storylines. We have the assassin storylines. This genuinely is so absolutely rammed full of all of these amazing different types of narrative that you very rarely get all in one place. And I think that some people, there are going to be aspects of this novel that you're not going to like because it's doing a lot. But I genuinely believe there are going to be aspects of this novel that you're going to love.
Yeah.
You know, when you get a Jim Butcher book in the Dresden Files, this is what you get. You get just this. This is the type of story.
Right.
You go, with Esslemont, there's going to be a Jim Butcher story in there. There's going to be a Sanderson story in there. There's going to be a Gemmell story in there. There's going to be an Erikson story. And it doesn't matter what author you like. Something of what is associated with them, there's going to be an aspect of it in the book.
Yeah, even a little Stephen King, I think. Yeah.
The horror element. We talked about this with Night of Knives.
Yes, we did.
Esslemont's evocation of horror in the series is this wonderful touch, and it never feels jarring. It always feels integrated into the world, and yet it is clearly horror, not fantasy.
Yep, definitely. Yep. With, how do you say his name? Rilandaris, whatever, the big jackal thing, whatever. I didn't look that one up, but anyway.
Rilandaris. Again, what you call him in your head is probably absolutely fine.
Yeah, but the horror elements associated with that big furry guy. You know,
Yeah,
I
and
mean, wow, scary.
but even when we first like hear about him, oh, he was this man eater, the plague of the Seti peoples, and you go, well, he can't be that bad. And then we see what he does to two different art, like that sequence where they go, we're going to release him, we're going to let you deal with him, and he runs amok through this army, people who are in formation with armor, with shields, with weapons, holding formation. He is ripping them to pieces. And the only thing that they come up with will blow a hole in the wall and send him back your way.
Yeah.
And it happens to them, and people start getting ripped to pieces. And we see that wonderful moment of running forward with the munition on the crossbow. That this evolution of using munitions in this world, that it's not just throwing them anymore, it's designing trebuchets that'll fire them, or ballista that will fire them, or crossbows. And then Rel holding them off while this fight is going on, and people getting injured, and people who survive and get healing, and you go, oh, they're going to be fine. And then they die of their wounds.
Yeah, like later. Storo. Yeah.
Storo dies of his wounds later, after he was fine. He was recovering.
Yeah.
And then we find out he died. And it's off page. And you go, but that doesn't feel good. That he shouldn't have died. He was getting better.
Yeah.
So again, we come back to that of Esslemont making us care about characters that we never thought that we'd care about. But we get so invested in their camaraderie, and like when they're running around on the battlements, and it's, would you get down here? They're firing at us, and it's, oh no, it'd be fine. And then they get one of them getting hit, and even Silk as a character walking around in his tattered, awful clothing, and basically everyone just thought he was a squad mage, and you go, he's a bit more than a squad mage. There
are layers to that guy, and probably somewhat of a guilty conscience too. You think,
but again, I think there's so much that Esslemont puts in this that is just so good, and so enjoyable, that I recommend it. I love these books. There's a reason why I enjoy these books.
Oh yeah, same here. I'm overjoyed to be reading this series, especially reading it along with you, AP, and it's just a ton of fun. I'm so glad we added this to our read of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and as I said earlier, we're going to be finishing them both right around the same time, right? I think like October-ish, right?
The thing is, if we'd been slightly smarter about it, we'd have started a couple of months later, and they would have fitted seamlessly in chronologically. But as it is, like, we've both read the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Exactly. Therefore, this is absolutely fine to work in. Plus, because of our training, finding things out of sequence is not as big a deal, I think, for us as it would be, the stuff that you read for fun.
Yep, this is true. Yeah. And like you said, I read the Malazan Book of the Fallen, so I'm not really spoiling anything for myself, I don't think, by doing it slightly out of sequence. But I'm just so glad I'm reading these, and I hope more people will read Esslemont's novels of the Malazan Empire. And I'm going to keep shouting about it as much as possible, because I'm so far 2 books into the series. I'm so impressed, and I also loved the Path to Ascendancy books. So yeah, this is an author I want to keep talking about more and more.
Well, in that case, Philip, why don't we finish off here? Let me thank you once again. It is such a pleasure to have you on the channel to talk about this stuff. I really enjoy our conversations, because this is fun. We have way too much fun talking about these, because let's face it, we are geeks and nerds about books. That's what we are. And I need to get a pair of glasses now. I put the jacket on for you, Philip. I put the jacket on.
It's a good start. I think to complete the look, though, you could use a pair of these right? With preferably with tape or something, you know.
But once again, thank you so much. I enjoy this. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your perspective. This has been fantastic.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much, AP. Always a pleasure.
And so now that I've thanked Philip, thank you guys for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed it at least half as much as Philip and I have. But thank you for watching. Like, leave a comment. I don't know. I'm trying to be more YouTubey about stuff. Subscribe. Yeah. I don't know. But I will link to Philip's channel in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.